On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, Keith and I continue our overview of the season as far as the players go. Today, Tobias Harris. Is he a keeper? We discuss it next right here on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto, an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. Welcome, you are Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic, radio in Philadelphia, alongside my co-host and partner Keith Pompey, Sixers beat writer extraordinaire. Keith, what's going on?
What's up, man? How you been, bro?
Doing pretty good, man. Good to be back with you, talking about another star Sixers player, key contributor for the season. But before we get into Tobias Harris, we have to thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. Keith, Tobias Harris, the curious case, it seems like every season for Tobias Harris this past campaign, which was, another one in the books for him. He is sitting on this year 17.2 points per game, good for 43rd in the NBA, 6.8 rebounds. So let's balance it out to 7 boards, 3.5 assists for Tobias Harris, a 6'7" forward who we know can score in a variety of different ways. He has a very good mid-range package. The game there has extended his overall game outside of the three-point line as well. And for him, just simply looking at what he was, he had to make an adjustment, man, from what he did early in the season before the James Harden trade. It was Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Tobias Harris. Those were your primary scorers for what they did for the basketball team. And he is a lightning bolt, if you will, of discussion when it comes to a player in this town, man. A lot of people like him. A lot of people, they don't dislike him. They're just not the biggest fans of Tobias Harris. So I want to talk about his season, 4th on the team in scoring at 17.2 a night, 7 boards. What do you make of Tobias Harris as a player for the 76ers?
You know, I think he's a good player for the 76ers.
Yes.
And the one thing that, I think the thing about Tobias Harris, if Tobias Harris was making, he makes around $36 million, set to make 37 next year, right? Mm-hmm. If Tobias Harris is making $20 million, everybody like, yo, great guy, great player. You know what I mean? He's this and that. But the fact that he makes so much money, I think that some people expect more and they hold a higher standard. You know what I mean? But this is one of those instances I feel like that you really can't. I know it's hard for people to do, but I feel like you really can't base his success or off of his paycheck. I mean, it was a situation where the Sixers had to pay him. Now, here's the thing for Tobias. You know, Tobias, like you said, he's Mr. Versatile. He can do a lot of different things. But to me, and I know he may not want to hear this or anybody else, but to me, he's quality as a 3rd option or 4th option on the elite team. You know, he could be a guy who can do a lot of other different things for you. Now, the one thing that I think that people aren't really taking into account was you factor in that he was averaging 17 points. Now, in the playoffs, you will have to say that he was the most consistent player.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes,
Even like he was the most consistent player. So to me, he was the one who kind of stepped up. Now, again, in the final 2 games of the Eastern Conference semifinals against Miami, he struggled like everyone else did. But for the most part, I'm not walking away from the playoffs saying, hey, man, you got to get rid of Tobias Harris. He really destroyed this team. But we both know that in regards to contracts and someone that you may have to trade to bring in someone that you really want, you look at Tobias Harris's contract and you say, hey, the Sixers can't eat that money. They may have to get rid of him in order to bring into a quality guy into the organization.
So with Tobias Harris, Keith, I ignore the price tag at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Call it for what it is. He's not deserving of that contract. That's for the higher level players in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
But he landed and found himself in a situation where, as you pointed out, they were in a spot where they had to pay him. Jimmy Butler leaves, JJ Redick leaves. They put together something else for Al Horford to make it work for them and their contract. All that stuff worked out. And Tobias Harris got the big contract, which is a max level contract for superstar level players. He is not that. As you pointed out, he's a third or fourth option on a winning team. If he's your second option, you're not going to win. And that's not a knock on him as a player. That's just who he is as a player. So he got that money, and good for him. He gambled on himself. He bet on himself. The Clippers offered him, 4 years, like $80 million, and he and his agent turned it down, and they struck gold. But when you do that, there are expectations that come with it. So as much as we may want to ignore that price tag, there are expectations to said player when you sign on the dotted line for a big number like that. I remember when Andre Iguodala got an $80 million contract from the Sixers after turning down a $60 million contract. And everyone said, well, you want to be the man. You want to sign on that dotted line and you want to take that big money. It's your team. You have to elevate your play. And he did to a certain extent. Tobias Harris is only going to level off at one spot, and that's around that 18, 19, 20 points per game. Is he going to get you over the top? So as far as his money, I put that to the side. He is a consistent guy who can give you, as I said, 17 to 20 points. I wish that number of points per game were a little bit higher. He does get enough shots, in my opinion, before Harden to do so. And I think his overall skill package could be a little better, but he is a good player, as you talked about. He does provide something. He does dig in now defensively a little bit more. And he talked about that during the Brett Brown era as well, where he took real pride into being a much better defender. And I appreciate that as a player. I don't mind at all. When he was traded here, don't mind at all having him on my team. But he is, in fact, to your point, a third or fourth option. Can they find ways to get him some easier buckets? Absolutely. They should run some plays for him to get him involved a little bit more. And he suffered the most when James Harden was traded here because he had to adapt his game being that fourth option with Maxey basically being your second or your third, depending on how you looked at it. So I thought his season was pretty good for this basketball team. His final month and a half from March and through April and then the start of the playoffs, he was fantastic for this basketball team. Now, the question, Keith, is this. Will he be back? Because I know we've talked about this on a few weeks ago when the season ended. Will you, looking to improve this team, will you get a better return if you move Harris, collecting another starter to replace him, but also possibly getting either a role player to come off the bench or another starter to go because of his money? That's where that comes into play. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about on the next segment with Tobias Harris, why he still, as good as he is as a player, might be the most attractive Sixer out there that can garner bringing something back to help this team continue to build that depth. We'll get into that next right here on Locked On 76ers. But first, I need to tell you about our good friends at Rock Auto. Once again, I talked to you about my headlight and it went out. And you never want to have that headlight go out where the police pull you over because you're being stopped now that you have only one headlight and the other is out. So what did I do? I saved my time. I saved my money by using our good friends again at Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? Why do that? I'll give you an example. The Honda Odyssey, their fuel pump is $353 on retail from a chain store. Rock Auto, $216. Come on, look how much money you save there. The same for me with a headlamp for my car. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Even for someone like me who has no idea what he's doing, I can even order a part from Rock Auto and change my headlight on the game. The prices are reliably low for every customer, not just me. That's why we encourage you to go. They have everything you can need, from brake parts, motor oil, even new carpets and tail lamps, as well as headlamps as well. Go check it out. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right locked on in their "How did you hear about us" box, so they know we sent you. Again, amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Do it today, people. Stealing it from my guy. Do it today. Thanks for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, at Locked On 76ers. Again, Locked On Now podcast for your next listen. That's our first listen, Locked On 76ers. Check out the Locked On Now podcast for nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Starting tonight, the NBA Finals. NBA Finals, going to be fun. Game 1, Boston, Golden State. Let's see what the Golden State Warriors can do. Knock off the Celtics. Knocked off the C's. Get them out of here.
You don't like the Celtics?
Growing up in Philadelphia, you do not like the Celtics.
I grew up in Philly.
You are a fraud.
Hey, bro, they got their process right.
They did get it right. They did get it right. I'm jealous. To be able to, listen, I love talking about the Sixers.
Haters going to hate
the playoffs, but I would love for us to be talking about an NBA Finals appearance right now. And they did get their rebuild right. You're absolutely right about that. But Keith, man, when you look at Tobias Harris and we talk about the price tag, where does he fit in with this team going forward? And as we talked about it again previously on another episode, we talked about him possibly being the best option for them to build more personnel because of his price tag and what they could potentially get back. I mean, do you see him fitting in with this team for the future going forward, at least for the 22-23 campaign that will be upcoming starting in September?
I do. I do. The tough part about Tobias Harris is that, he has 2 years remaining on his contract, 2 years and $76.9 million left on his deal. That's a lot of cheddar, right? And then you factor in that.
But it's only 2 years, so it is movable.
It's only 2 years. And then you look at it where, the Sixers, remember, people forget, there was a point where, when the Sixers were trying to trade Ben Simmons, a lot of teams, they were saying, hey, you got to take Tobias. You got to take Tobias.
Yeah.
And there were some teams who were shied away from that, right? Like Atlanta was one.
Kings, there was
Kings were another team that didn't want it, right? But in remember, they were thinking about, it was in discussions with preliminary ones with OKC about a potential salary dump, right? Now, when you look at Tobias Harris right now, you can say to yourself, there are a lot of teams that are available who could take him, right? Like after trading Robert Covington and Norman Powell to the Clippers and CJ McCollum to the New Orleans Pelicans, the Trailblazers will have enough cap space to take on his contract this summer, right?
Okay.
Now, the Detroit Pistons, the Orlando Magic, the San Antonio Spurs will also have enough cap space to take on Tobias. Mm-hmm. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Houston Rockets, if they waive John Wall or restructure his contract, could also be in play, right? Yep. So there are a lot of scenarios for someone to take Tobias. Now, here's the problem right now, because typically the Sixers do have their draft pick, and we'll talk about that later. But the thing is, typically, in order for a team to take on Tobias's contract, they're going to say to them, okay, this is a salary dump, but what you going to do for us? So now what the Sixers may be able to do is, because they can't trade that pick before the draft, they could possibly say, all right, we'll select said player for you at number 23.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if that's because of it's the 23rd pick. I don't even know if that's good enough. So you may say, a team may say, okay, well, we kind of like Matisse. But to be honest with you, if you're going to take on that salary, now Matisse is a great player, a guy who I believe that will be available via a trade this summer. But if I'm a team, I'm saying that's $76 million. I need Maxey, right?
Right.
And I need Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah.
And the question is, are the Sixers willing to give up Tyrese Maxey along with Tobias Harris just to shed the $76 million in order to bring in somebody, right?
Yeah.
So, or whatever it is. So to me, I don't know if I'm the Sixers, if I'm willing to do all that. I mean, giving up Maxey. I mean, I better know in hand that I'm gonna get somebody that's going to catapult right then and there to be number one in the East, which is going to be extremely competitive. Because again, Tobias Harris has a cap hit of $37.6 million next season. That's a lot of money, but you're going to have to give up much more than him in order for a team to take on that contract.
I guess it's just a matter of, to your point, what is going to be in return. That's the deal. You don't make a deal, of course, unless you know you're getting something back and something that's going to be beneficial for your team too. If you're moving two starters, what are we getting back in return? And when you make the example of those teams that you alluded to, San Antonio, Portland, Oklahoma City, or Orlando, what players would you even want from those rosters there? Keldon Johnson, a young player from the San Antonio Spurs, is that a player that's going to come in and help get you over the top? Same when you go to Portland, there's really nothing there. Yes, we talk about the depth and building this team in general. I would have to think about that overall. And the one that always stands out is Oklahoma City, because they can absorb his big contract for the season, 30 plus million. And they can take that underneath their salary cap, help get them to the floor and take on that deal. And you may get a young player potentially that doesn't make a lot of money on that team, because not many players on that team make money outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And you're not going to get Josh Giddey or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. The draft is on June 23rd, and we will find out as we get closer. You'll hear a lot of rumors and a lot of things out there, and I'm sure his name will come up as well, because we know that Daryl Morey is a deal maker and likes to make some deals and get things done. So interesting points there, Keith. And to your point about that draft later on this month, on June 23rd, we need to talk about the Sixers getting back the 23rd pick in this month's draft. We found out on Wednesday that the Brooklyn Nets deferred it. We'll talk to you and explain what it means for the Sixers to have this pick and what they could potentially do. We do that next right here, Locked On 76ers.
Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm telling you, do it today, people. Definitely do it today.
I don't know, folks, if you're just tuning in to Locked On 76ers, Keith seems like he's stealing some of my lines with his people. So, oh man, but you make it sound good. You make it sound good.
Keith, copyrighted, bro. You better copyright, right. Joel. Copyright. Did trademark the process, right?
Hey, we're in this together. It's all good. It's all good. The 23rd overall pick deferred back. It was sent to the Brooklyn Nets by the Sixers in the James Harden, Ben Simmons deal that took place in February around the trade deadline. Sixers get it back. Instead, the Nets will look to the 23 draft and go with that unprotected pick. I still think the Sixers are going to be good, so it's going to be in the 20s. Maybe they just feel like the talent pool might be better next year. But in any event, the Sixers have the 23rd overall pick. They do not have a second-round selection in the draft later this month, Keith. So what do you think they do, man? Do they keep this pick? Do they trade it? What are their options here, especially with another young player? They've had some guys, but Jaden Springer, the latest one, pick number 28, he barely saw the floor. He was in the G League a lot. What do they do here?
You know what? I don't think unless it's somebody who can fall to him like a Tyrese Maxey.
Yep.
I don't think right now that a young guy is really going to help this team. I mean, there were certain guys we talked about yesterday and the day before that, actually.
Monday,
in regards to them possibly picking up someone, but a certain guy's pick. But I really think that right now, where the Sixers are, and basically how Doc Rivers is, he's a guy who he says he does not dislike playing young guys, but he doesn't play young guys. So it's one of those things where, in my opinion, they would be better off if they can't trade the draft pick or trade the player they draft. I think they would be better off stashing a guy. You know what I mean? You can always go the G League route, but at the same time, it's looking to me that that's $2.5 million that you're allocating for a guy who's going to sit the bench or a guy who's going to go down to the G League. So you might as well stash him, or let's see, like we said beforehand, if you can try to trade Tobias and Matisse or whomever, it's one of those things where, hey, we also will draft a player for you and send him to your team, with these players. Because, me personally, I just don't see anyone in this draft, unless they're lucky enough to get someone to drop to them, who's going to really help them come out of the East and win a championship right about now.
So I'll say this part first about certain players, specifically two. One you talk about from the G League Ignite team, Marshawn Beauchamp, the 6'6", 6'7" athletic wing. We don't know, but the profile fits for what they need, and ideally you'd like that in a veteran player. And I also like E.J. Liddell from Ohio State, who's another big body guy who plays the power forward position, and you can also be a versatile player at this level, and he's a upperclassman, right? So that's somebody that I look at, and I say that I like him in college, and could potentially help a team on the back end like this if he were able to step in and give you some minutes. But I agree with you. I'm not sure that I'm ready to add another after taking Jaden Springer last year, having the success that they've had from, you mentioned it in your story, from Landry Shamet, Matisse Thybulle, and Tyrese Maxey, the only one that hasn't hit. And we don't know. Jaden Springer might turn out to be a player. Is Jaden Springer. So I think they need to go the route of moving it and not even stashing. It's just simply moving it in a deal. Let's say Matisse Thybulle, as you mentioned, may not be back and the team is interested, but you need to add a little bit of salary there. So you add that 23rd pick and you include that in whatever player they may be bringing back to help out as far as possibly being a fifth starter or a potential just role player coming off the bench in general to help out with the depth overall. So I'm right now in the camp of, and until I see something else, or at least we have a little more information to ship this pick out, drafting the player, then trading him on draft night to the team or after July 1st and trading him to the team that eventually wanted that player, and the Sixers selected them for that team. They need veterans now. If Doc Rivers is not going to play these young guys, there's no point in even going out there and doing that when you already have Joe, Reed, Bassey, Maxey on your squad, and even Matisse Thybulle, unless he is moved in this potential trade package. That I think they go with the route of moving the pick and trying to bring back in a young veteran or just a veteran in general.
Yeah, I agree with you, because the one thing that we said is, it's not who we like, it's what Doc Rivers likes. And, I'm going to go back and say this, he's a guy who he doesn't say that he doesn't like playing young guys, But when you look at his track record, he typically doesn't. Now, again, he'll say, I started Rondo. But, there are some exceptions, but we're talking about a late first round pick. I mean, typically when a guy is a high pick, you have to play him. You have to play him. But when they're a late first round pick, you can get away with just sending the dude to the G League.
Yeah, absolutely right, man. So, hey, these next 22 days are going to be fantastic. We know how it was when it was the rebuild, and we would have top 3 picks, top 5, top 10, lottery picks all over the place, all these second round picks, late first, all that stuff, man. And it was fun. It was a blast. Once the season was done and they got their doors blown off all the time, it was fun to finally get to the summer and get ready for the draft and free agency and all that stuff, Keith. And now it's on the back burner. And this is where they are. And we talk about the Boston Celtics and where they are and ahead of the Sixers. They've drafted right. They've drafted late in the first round. They've picked up some really good players, Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Peyton Pritchard, that are good.
The team you hate? You talking about the team you hate?
Like the players, though. I just, the organization, they suck. And that's just what it is. But respect is what respect is. And they are there. And the Sixers are not. And I said that during the show on Wednesday night. And I had someone tweet into me, Keith, that someone pointed out, yes, but the Simmons and the Markelle Fultz thing happened and all that. And that's why the Sixers are where they are. But it happened. It's the bottom line. It happened.
Keep blaming that. Because, I mean, it continues to happen. I mean, exactly. You know what I mean? Like, like James Harden, we look at him now, and they got rid of him, and everybody thought they were going to get Houston James, and they got facilitated James right now. So, I mean, they say, we'll find out if he can, if he can revert back a little bit next season. But at the same time, things like this continue to happen. They trade Jimmy Butler and they get Al Horford. And then Al Horford looks like he's shot. And then come to find out, he wasn't utilized the right way.
Right.
So
yeah,
it is what it is.
Maybe Elton Brand had the right idea. It just wasn't executed properly with how things went. So we saw what we saw. It didn't work. So what we know is what we know. But right now, he's a starter on a finals team that represents the Eastern Conference beginning tonight. Keith, before we let you go, man, as much as I can't stand the Celtics, I have the Celtics in 6. What are your thoughts on this series? It's going to be a good one, I think.
I picked the Celtics to win this series. I was actually, I actually said it on Fox 29. I said I got the Celtics winning the NBA Finals. That's before the second round. That's before it started. I don't know. I like them. But here's the problem with the Celtics with me. Watching, they're a little bit too shaky. And what I mean by that is,
can be.
How many games have they had where they had their full roster? Due to injuries, due to COVID, due to a lot of different things. So as much as I think these young guys are going to come out there and put on a show, I don't know if I can really rely on them. So my heart is saying the Celtics, but my mind is saying you got Steph Curry all the time. You got all these guys who are going to consistently be there.
Championship pedigree over there.
Huh? Yeah, they have that. They have that. Now, the thing is, the one thing that I will say is when you have a bunch of young boys and they show up at the park and the old heads are like, boy, you can't get it. Sometimes them young dudes are going to embarrass you because they don't know what they don't know. That's what Brett Brown used to say. They don't know what they don't know, right? So that's the thing. But
then you have those old heads that are like, let me show you a thing or two.
Yeah, old heads, let me show you a thing or two.
And we're talking about legacy here with these 3, with their run that they have the 3 already. They're going for a 4th. What does this mean for Stephen Curry, who's already a Hall of Famer? We know all 3 of them are Hall of Famers. But when you look at Steph Curry, if he wins this one, that's 4. He's right there with LeBron James. Then he's going to be in the conversation of, does he get a 5th before LeBron James? He's right there with Tim Duncan. Kobe has 5. all of that. So that's why, I do not count out the Golden State Warriors, and I hope the Warriors do win. I'm a basketball fan, so I want to see the Warriors win. I'm all about legacy here, so I want to see if those guys can do this again. And but I do think the Celtics, they have both defensively and offensively, they've been pretty strong. They've been blown out, but they bounced back and they've been pretty strong.
I mean, I like the Celtics, but and I'm gonna stick with the Celtics.
Okay.
But I'm a little shaky because that injury report is shaky. Up, and it's like, yo, you mean 2 starters aren't playing tonight? Yeah. That's the thing that really concerns me about them. But I'm gonna go with my heart over my mind, and I'm gonna say Boston.
I don't like you saying you're going with your heart. Why are you going with your heart with the Celtics? Come on, man.
Well, basically, that's the team. I don't mean like, oh, I love the Boston Celtics. What I mean is I should go with, I just have a sense that, a good way to explain it. I have a sense that Boston is the better team.
Okay.
From top to bottom. Like, I know, I get it. The Warriors have guys that we never heard of before this season, and they're straight out balling, right? And then they have their big 3. But I think that Boston, is a better team. However, that's my heart or that's my emotion. But my mind is telling me I wouldn't go to Vegas and put that down, put my house on.
Bingo.
Because you don't know who's going to play.
Bingo.
So that's what I'm saying. But I'm going to go with the Celtics.
Okay. Sounds fair enough. Fair enough. Well, tomorrow, guys, we thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Enjoy game 1 tonight. Tomorrow, maybe we'll have something to talk about there with that, but we will get into where we going, Harden or Maxey for this one. What are we doing? Where do you want to go? Maxey was a social media correspondent for practice out there. So where are we going?
Let's go with James Harden.
We go to James Harden for our Friday 76 Locked On 76ers podcast. That's Keith said it. We got to do it today, people. Do it today. Now, make your second listen Locked On NBA, Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. And I'm sure a lot of that will have to do with the fact that the game 1 will be in the books of the NBA Finals. Keith, a fun one, man. And got a lot accomplished with Tobias Harris. See how all of it plays out. And we'll see what happens in game number 1 tonight, man. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks, man.
All right, look, let's tell the people, though, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts at, right? Secondly, if you want to get this YouTube channel, make sure you go to the Locked On 76ers YouTube channel and click on the Liberty Bell, and that's how you can subscribe exclusively to our YouTube channel. But I'm telling y'all, like my man D keeps saying, do it today. But lastly, why don't you give us a follow on Twitter? Follow my man, Devon G975 at Devon G975 on Twitter, and you can follow me at Pompey on Sixers.
Absolutely. Thank you, folks. Talk to you tomorrow.
Peace.